The sky is calm. There are no clouds, there is no wind. But a woman weeps, and her tears unleash the storm. Saint Benedict, father of Western monasticism, must depart. The rule demands it. But his twin sister knows a higher law. 6th century. Rome has fallen, but from its ashes something new emerges. In the mountains of Umbria, where wolves still howl on winter nights and Roman roads crumble beneath the undergrowth, the Christian faith takes deep root in extraordinary souls. Nursia, a city of gray stone nestled among snow-capped peaks, holds a secret. In a noble house, two beings have come into the world in the same birth, a boy and a girl, Benedict and Scholastica. Twins not only of blood, but of destiny. He will write the rule that will shape Western monasticism. She will live by a law more ancient and more profound, that of pure love. This is the story of the woman whose tears made the heavens tremble, because she loved more than anyone in her time. Scholastica's early years unfold in the unhurried rhythm of a Roman villa that resists the passage of time. The house of Eutropius and Abundantia preserves the customs of their ancestors. The lararium where candles burn, now consecrated to the true God, the hours marked by morning and evening prayer, the psalms sung as a family while the sun sets behind the Sibylline mountains. In this atmosphere of inherited piety, the twins grow like two shoots from the same root. But while Benedict shows from an early age a restlessness that will lead him to seek distant horizons, Scholastica cultivates the gift of rootedness. Her world is interior, vast as the sky, yet contained within the space of a chapel, in the silence of a cell, in the depths of a heart that learns to empty itself in order to be filled with God. The nursemaids of the house tell stories about the girl. They say she never cried without reason, that her eyes seemed to see beyond visible things, that when she prayed the Our Father, her face was transfigured with a light that did not come from the windows. These are testimonies of servants, perhaps embellished by affection, but they point to a reality. From childhood, Scholastica possesses a familiarity with the divine that others take entire lifetimes to achieve. Her education follows the normal course for a young patrician woman. She learns to read from the Gospels, to write by copying the Psalms, to weave, and to manage a household. But she does all this as one who fulfills a lesser duty while awaiting the only task that matters. Her true school is prayer, her true teacher is the Holy Spirit. When Benedict departs for Rome, Scholastica is approximately 15 years old. The separation is a tearing apart, but also a liberation. Now she can devote herself without distractions to the life she has chosen in secret. One night, alone in the family chapel, she makes her vow. There are no human witnesses, no external ceremony. Only her, the crucifix, and words whispered in the darkness. She consecrates herself as a virgin to Christ, bride of the Lamb, betrothed to the Eternal. It is an act of spiritual boldness, almost without precedent for a young woman of her station. The consecrated virgins of that era received the veil from the hands of the bishop in public ceremonies that officially separated them from the world. Scholastica has no access to that rite, but she does not need it. Her consecration is more radical precisely because it is invisible. Only God knows it, only God accepts it, only before God will she answer. The following years are years of active waiting. Fragmentary news arrives about Benedict, that he abandoned Rome, scandalized by its vices, that he lives in a cave like the ancient anchorites of Egypt, that disciples are beginning to gather around him. Scholastica receives each piece of news as confirmation of what she already knew. The twins are walking toward the same destiny along paths that seem to diverge but converge in the invisible. She cannot go to the desert like her brother, cannot found monasteries or write rules. The society of her time does not offer those paths to women. But Scholastica discovers something that will transform the history of Christian spirituality, that the desert can be inhabited without leaving home, that the monastery can be built in the heart, that the most perfect rule is the rule of love. While Benedict organizes communities and drafts precepts, his twin sister already lives what he will take decades to understand, that every monastic law has a single purpose, and that purpose is love. Around the year 529, when Benedict establishes his definitive community at the summit of Monte Cassino, Scholastica understands that her moment has arrived. For years, she has secretly cultivated the contemplative life, but now she feels the call to take one more step. She leaves the family home in Nursia and undertakes a journey that, though brief in distance, represents the definitive crossing of her soul. She settles in Plumbariola, a small enclave at the foot of the sacred mountain, where her brother has destroyed the last temple of Apollo to build upon its ruins the sanctuary of the living God. The choice of location is no accident. Scholastica wants to be near Benedict without violating the cloister that both have embraced. It is a nearness measured in kilometers of rock and forest, but above all, in the invisible communion of two souls breathing the same spiritual air. The community that Scholastica gathers around herself is modest. A handful of women who, like her, have heard the call of the desert in the midst of the world. There are no grand buildings nor princely endowments. The sisters live in austere cells, work the land with their own hands, and dedicate the canonical hours to divine praise. Scholastica does not impose a written rule because it does not yet exist as a finished document. Benedict is still drafting it at the mountain's summit, but she instinctively lives the principles her brother sets down on parchment. The stability that anchors the soul to a place and a community. The conversion of life that purifies the heart day by day. The obedience that frees one from the weight of the self. All this she transmits not through speeches, but through presence. The sisters learn by watching her pray, work, keep silence, smile even when the body aches and the spirit feels barren. The annual meeting with Benedict becomes the axis around which Scholastica's liturgical year revolves. For 11 months, she lives in waiting, and that waiting is not empty, but fruitful, like earth awaiting rain. When the appointed day finally arrives, she descends from Plumbariola toward the neutral house where the rule permits their encounter. The hours they spend together are a foretaste of eternity. They speak of the scriptures, share their interior struggles, console each other in the trials of the journey. Benedict tells her about the difficult monks, about the temptations of abbatial power, about the weight of being father to so many souls. Scholastica listens more than she speaks, but when she speaks, her words carry the weight of one who has descended into the depths of silence and returned with treasures. She reminds her brother of what he himself teaches, but sometimes forgets, that all monastic architecture, with its schedules and precepts and penances, exists solely to lead to love. The years at Plumbariola are years of hidden maturation. While the outside world tears itself apart in wars between Goths and Byzantines, while epidemics decimate populations and the roads fill with refugees, Scholastica's small community remains like an island of peace. It is not a naive or escapist peace. The sisters know suffering, they welcome the hungry, they heal the sick who arrive at their door. But in the midst of the outer storm, they maintain the interior serenity that only constant prayer can give. Scholastica ages without anyone noticing because her face preserves the luminosity of one who lives looking inward, toward that center of the soul where God dwells. Her body bends under the weight of fasts and vigils, but her eyes shine ever brighter, as if already contemplating realities that others will only glimpse after death. The younger sisters seek her company not to receive instructions, but to absorb something of that light she radiates without words. The deepest trial Scholastica must face comes not from without, but from within. It is the dark night of the soul, that interior desert where God seems to have withdrawn and prayer becomes a cry into the void. Mystics of every age have known this experience, and Scholastica is no exception. There are seasons when the fervor of her early years fades, when the words of the Psalms ring hollow, when the silence of the cloister weighs upon her like a tombstone. The sisters closest to her notice that their spiritual mother spends entire nights prostrate before the altar, motionless as a stone statue, her face bathed in tears that bring no consolation, but only desolation. Yet Scholastica does not abandon her post. She remains faithful when faithfulness offers no sensible reward, when loving God requires an act of pure will, stripped of all sweetness. This perseverance in aridity is perhaps her greatest victory, greater than any visible miracle. The Italy of those years bleeds from 1,000 wounds. The Byzantine general Belisarius has reconquered Rome for the Emperor of Constantinople, but the Ostrogoths counterattack with fury. Totila, their warrior king, razes entire cities in his advance southward. The news that reaches Plumbariola speaks of massacres, fires, monasteries sacked. On one occasion, a group of Gothic soldiers appears near the community. The sisters tremble with terror, remembering the stories of rape and murder that precede these armies. Scholastica gathers them in the chapel and begins to sing Psalm 90, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High." Her voice is steady, without a trace of fear. And something extraordinary happens. The soldiers pass by, as if an invisible force had turned them from the path. The sisters attribute their salvation to their mother's intercession, but she forbids any talk of the matter. What God does in secret must remain in secret. The spiritual bond with Benedict deepens over the years, though paradoxically the words they exchange during their annual meetings grow ever fewer. They no longer need to explain to each other what they experience in prayer. A glance, a shared silence, suffices to communicate what words cannot contain. Scholastica senses her brother's struggles before he mentions them, and Benedict perceives his twin's interior states with a clarity that transcends the natural. They are two halves of a single soul that God separated at birth to unite more perfectly in spirit. This mystical communion between the siblings would be remembered for centuries as a model of spiritual friendship, of that purified love which seeks not possession, but self-giving, which fears not distance, because it dwells in eternity. Scholastica's final years at Plumbariola are marked by an inexplicable joy that contrasts with the decline of her body. Her legs barely support her, her hands tremble as she raises the communion chalice, her voice has been reduced to a whisper, but her face shines with a peace the sisters have seen only in icons of the saints. She knows the end draws near, and this certainty does not sadden her, but fills her with joyful expectation. She begins to say her farewells quietly. She gives away her few possessions, blesses each sister with words that sound like a testament, spends hours contemplating the sky, like one awaiting the arrival of a long-desired bridegroom. When the time comes for the last annual meeting with Benedict, Scholastica descends the mountain with a determination her weak legs should not permit. Something drives her beyond natural strength. She knows this time will be different. This time love will have the final word. The winter of the year 547 descends upon Monte Cassino with unusual severity. Snow covers the paths between the monastery and Plumbariola, but nothing will stop Scholastica. At nearly 70 years old, the body she has punished with decades of penance barely responds to her will, but her spirit burns with an intensity that consumes all weakness. When the sisters try to dissuade her from the journey, she looks at them with those eyes that seem to contemplate time and eternity simultaneously and tells them with unbreakable gentleness, "I must see my brother one last time." She does not explain how she knows it will be the last. She simply knows, with that certainty possessed only by those who have lived so close to God that they have learned to read His designs before they manifest. The path toward the meeting house becomes a pilgrimage. Each step Scholastica takes upon the frozen snow is a step toward the threshold of eternity. The sisters accompanying her Notice that she walks with a lightness improper for her age and weakness, as if invisible forces were sustaining her. Benedict already awaits her at the neutral house. Upon seeing her arrive, the great legislator of monasticism feels a pang in his heart he cannot explain. His twin sister appears transfigured, more fragile than ever in body, more radiant than ever in spirit. They embrace with the contained tenderness of those who have learned to love each other in God and for God. Thus begins the last earthly conversation between these two giants of Christian spirituality. They speak of the scriptures as always, but this time the words have a different flavor. Scholastica asks her brother about the mysteries of heaven, about the beatific vision, about the moment of definitive encounter with Christ. Benedict responds with the wisdom accumulated from a lifetime of prayer and study, but he notices that his sister seeks not information, but confirmation. She already knows all of this, having learned it not from books, but in the silence of the heart. She only wants to hear it from the lips of the one she loves most in this world, as a final gift before the journey. The hours pass swiftly as always when they are together. The sun begins to decline, tinting the hills of Umbria with gold. Benedict rises with the habitual gesture of one who must fulfill a duty. The office of Vespers awaits him at Monte Cassino, and after that, Compline, and after that, Matins. The rule admits no exceptions, not even for fraternal love. Scholastica feels that the decisive moment has arrived. Everything she has lived, everything she has prayed, everything she has loved during nearly 7 decades converges in this instant. She looks at her brother with pleading eyes and pronounces the words that Saint Gregory the Great has preserved for posterity. I beg you, my brother, do not leave me this night, so that we may converse until dawn about the joys of eternal life. It is a simple request, almost childlike in its vulnerability. She invokes no rights nor argues reasons. She only asks, from the absolute nakedness of love. Benedict, the man who has taught thousands of monks the path of perfection, responds with the impeccable logic of the legislator. Sister, what are you saying? I can by no means remain outside the monastery. His refusal is born not of coldness, but of fidelity. He has consecrated his life to establishing an order where personal whim is subordinated to the common good, where discipline creates the conditions for charity to flourish. He cannot destroy with a gesture what he has built over decades. But Scholastica knows a law more ancient than any written rule, a law inscribed in the very heart of God. She bows her head over her clasped hands, closes her eyes, and begins to pray. She pronounces no audible words. She makes no elaborate petitions. She simply loves, with all her being, with all the intensity accumulated in a lifetime of contemplation. And from that love springs weeping, silent tears that fall upon the table like drops of liquid fire. In that moment, Scholastica does not ask for a miracle. She does not think of storms or prodigies. She only desires a few more hours with her brother before departing for the definitive homeland. But the love that governs the universe hears that desire, and heaven itself is moved by the purity of that heart. Thunder rumbles like the voice of God answering his beloved daughter. Benito watches in astonishment as the serene sky transforms into an ocean of black clouds in a matter of seconds. Lightning illuminates Scholastica's face, still wet with tears, but now radiant with a peace that transcends all human understanding. Rain pounds the roof with primordial fury, and wind howls through the hills like a choir of angels celebrating love's victory over the letter of the law. The great abbot of Monte Cassino, the man whose word is obeyed by hundreds of monks, finds himself powerless before heaven's will. He cannot leave. The forces of nature, summoned by an old woman's tears, have blocked his path. And in that moment, Benito understands something no book had ever taught him, that there exists an authority higher than his own, a rule older than the one he has written, a power that resides not in institutions, but in the heart that loves without measure. The night that follows is both the longest and the shortest of their lives. Long because each instant is charged with eternity, because the words they exchange carry the weight of final farewells. Short because true love always wants more time, because no night is enough to exhaust the mysteries of God that two contemplative souls can share. They speak of heaven as one describes their own home, because both have already visited it in prayer. They speak of Christ as one speaks of an intimate friend, because both have encountered him in the silence of the cloister. They speak of death as one plans an expected journey, because both know that dying is simply crossing the threshold into the true homeland. Outside, the storm continues to rage, but inside the small house reigns a peace that no wind can disturb. Scholastica knows these are her last hours in the company of her brother in blood and spirit. But there is no sadness in her heart, only infinite gratitude for the gift of this night stolen from time, torn from the established order by the irresistible force of love. When dawn begins to brighten over the mountains of Umbria, the storm subsides as suddenly as it had begun. The sky clears as if nothing had happened, as if nature itself wished to erase the traces of the miracle so that it would remain only in the memory of witnesses. The siblings look at each other in silence. Everything has been said, everything has been shared, everything has been sealed with the seal of eternal love. Scholastica rises with difficulty, leaning on the table where her miraculous tears had fallen. Benito supports her, and in that simple gesture is contained all the tenderness of a life shared since their mother's womb. They embrace for the last time. There are no words of farewell, because they know they will meet again very soon, in a place where separations do not exist and love knows no limits. Scholastica sets out on the path back to Plumbariola, and Benito watches her walk away until her figure disappears behind the first hill. Something within him tells him he has just witnessed not a farewell, but a beginning. 3 days later, while Benito prays in his cell at Monte Cassino, his eyes rise toward the window, drawn by a mysterious force. What he beholds then will remain forever engraved in the annals of Christian mysticism. His sister's soul ascending toward the heights of heaven in the form of a white dove, luminous, finally free from the bonds of flesh. Scholastica has died, but death is not the right word. She has been born into true life. She has crossed the threshold that separates time from eternity. She has reached the goal toward which she walked for nearly 70 years of silent faithfulness. Benito does not weep from sorrow, but from holy envy mixed with uncontainable joy. His sister has arrived before him at the Father's house, and from there she will intercede for all who still wander in this valley of tears. He immediately sends his monks to Plumbariola to retrieve the sacred body. They bring it to Monte Cassino, with the reverence due a precious relic, singing psalms of victory as they ascend the mountain. Benito has prepared his own tomb in the crypt of the Abbey Church, but now he yields that place to his sister. The twins who shared the same womb will share the same sepulchre, united in death as they were in life, awaiting together the resurrection of the body. The tomb at Monte Cassino holds the remains of two souls whom heaven united before they were born. There they rest, side by side, the lawgiver and the contemplative, the father of monks and the mother of nuns, the man of the rule and the woman of love. 14 centuries have passed, and their grave remains a beacon for those who seek God in silence. Wars have devastated the monastery time and again. The bombings of 1944 reduced it to rubble, but it has always risen from its ashes, because what Benedict and Scholastica planted has roots in eternity. Scholastica leaves us a single lesson, but it is the lesson that contains all others. Love more. She wrote no treatises on prayer, but her life was one continuous prayer. She founded no congregations bearing her name, but every Benedictine nun is her daughter. She performed no spectacular miracles, but that stormy night she proved that the pure heart holds power over the elements. In a world obsessed with efficiency and measurable results, she reminds us that the only thing that endures is love, and that whoever loves more can do more. May her example illuminate our days of spiritual dryness, when prayer seems barren and silence weighs like a sentence. May her intercession sustain us in hours of trial, when heaven seems closed and God keeps silent. May her memory inspire us to seek not extraordinary gifts, but the ordinary and supreme gift of loving without measure. Saint Scholastica, virgin and contemplative, teacher of the love that moves the heavens, pray for us.